Good morning, this is Heather Himmelberger. I'm the director of the Southwest Environmental Finance Center, and I just want to thank everybody for whoever was able to join us this morning. As a reminder, what we're going to do today is just talk a little bit about the asset management applied activity that was part of workshop number 4. And workshop number 4 is where we talked about life cycle costing related to replacement of assets. And then we talked about funding that was related to communicating the need for replacing assets and the funding for doing asset management type activities. So what we had you do was develop an assessment of short and long-term asset replacement needs, thinking about the things that you were going to have to replace based on their condition, criticality, your prior history with similar assets, kind of looking at what things you thought about in terms of what needed to be replaced, and then looking at a capital improvement plan for the next 20 years, kind of what did you need to do in each year, what kinds of assets did you think you were going to have to replace, and the total cost of those assets. And then we talked about, what would you want to tell to your upper management, your elected leaders, about the need for that funding, what kinds of things you had to do, why they should support you, etc. And this was to focus on just that part of your system that we were talking about throughout the whole course. So some people picked hydrants, other people picked water lines, somebody else might have picked valves or meters, etc. So we were only doing the capital improvement plan related to that part of your system. We weren't talking about a capital improvement plan for the entire system. So with that, I will offer to turn it over to Brian. It sounded like we were able to hear you just fine, Brian. Let's see if, Brian, are you there?
Yes, I am.
All right, so why don't I turn it over to you. If you just want to talk a little bit about the asset management applied activity that you did, and maybe just remind us on what area you were working with in your facility, and then talk about your activity and share any issues you had, or positive, negative challenges, etc. that you had in doing the activity.
Okay, I was working with the town of Northfield, and we were looking at to replace the Cheney Farm reservoir that they have, and currently that is the one that has the two HDP line cells. So we went through this process this morning, and with our assets, we have the existing tank, the liners, the buildings, the control valve, and the pipe were our assets, and most everything, the conditions considered was age, but we do have leakage and technology and maintenance as considered on the replacements for those. So we thought we have replacement costs and on each of those listed, and then when we talked with the guys this morning on it, and it looks like the buildings are going to be doing upgrades this year anyways. So we put that on under our replacement costs for the liners and the buildings as going under a CIP for the next couple of years to replace each of those. But then what they said they probably would do with the tank and the pipe being a $2 million price tag is they wouldn't really do a CIP for it. They found that historically, with a $2 million project, what they can put away ends up being kind of, just a drop in the bucket, what they need. So they would bond and get a loan for that project after the life cycle of the liners. So that's when we have our 20-year life cycle. We have the liners being replaced in the next year or two, and then we figured 15 years down the road is when they would do the tank project. So that's.
Do you know what the cost of their liner replacement was?
That was, well, they did it in 2003, was $53,000. So we figured on, replace about 70 grand.
Okay.
In today's dollars, it's probably going to be pretty close to that.
Okay.
So that's what, and we ended up doing a CIP for $35,000, but we're going to carry it for 3 years. Pat wanted to do that just for any contingencies for the project.
And you said you're planning on doing that pretty soon here, the liner replacement.
Well, that's what they're thinking now is, but again, it could change because they know there's no issues with the liners yet.
Uh-huh.
So they're still, waiting. Every year they test them and there's no issues, so they just keep going.
Great.
But that's what we did for our 20-year plan is the buildings and the liner were, and even the liners might not go for another 5, 6, 7 years, if they even go. Because he would like to just replace the tanks and be done with it, but they've got other improvements they had done in the last 5, 6 years that they've just started paying back, so it might not be able to get through another $2 million project.
Right, so the liner would be sort of a short-term fix to try to put off the replacement for another maybe 10, 15 years after
so
that.
Have, the finances, the payments on these current projects will be well underway.
Mm-hmm.
So
do you feel it sounds like you have pretty good support to actually get the work done when you need to?
Yeah.
Is that true that you seem to have at least some consideration that the liners might need to be replaced and then eventually the tank?
Yeah, I mean, the tanks, these are the ones that were installed in 1906.
Mm-hmm.
So there's, they all seem real solid, but, they're still, 100 and something years old, so you never know.
I
So
guess that's one of those
everyone knows that.
they don't build them like they used to.
No. So everyone knows that, and do you want to just tear them out because they're that old and you don't really have any reason to? No one wants to do that either. So I think it's kind of just trying to have some contingencies in place, but waiting for the right time.
Uh-huh. There's
And
actually a school of thought now that that's not a bad way to go, to kind of wait and be very prepared financially to, having it in your plan and kind of having it in the budget for when something would, kind of need to be done, but maybe backing off a little bit from just rushing in and replacing it. So you're kind of in that mode of, kind of looking at very carefully how to budget and how to plan for it, but really trying to be thoughtful about when's the right time to do it. When's the best time to actually take that action and, replace the tanks, or whether you should continue to refurbish, with the liners and that kind of thing.
yep, that's exactly what they're doing. Is they don't know, they don't have the money right now, or they have done fairly major transmission upgrades in the last 5 to 10 years. So those projects are all getting into the payment phase now. So they're not looking to do a major project right away, but they do know that this tank has to be replaced at some time. And if they can just be prepared for it, they can probably the $2 million price tag won't be that bad to do, as long as they can be prepared for it.
Great. Any questions from any of the other folks on the line? We have a couple others that joined. Anybody have any questions? Okay, well, thank you very much. I think has Richard joined us now?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Richard, do you want to go next and talk about your system?
Oh, yeah, right. Actually, I'm the one with the fire hydrants.
Okay.
And actually, one of the things I had presented our capital replacement plan with the Prudential Committee, which is the governing body, and what they had indicated, they had allocated $45,000. We had estimated it's going to be about $6,000 per hydrant. So they said, look, we're going to allow you $45,000 for starting in fiscal year 17, and then we're going to go from there. And what they had indicated, they want us to target specific developments, especially the ones that were older and the ones that we know that we're going to be having issues, with the failure of the fire hydrants themselves. So that's what we're planning on doing, and also we're going to be, when spring comes, we'll be implementing flushing program or exercising program in those particular areas to determine whether or not we have any failures. Where traditionally we only flush annually. We're going to target those developments that have those particular make and model of hydrants, and make sure that they are functioning, so that, because now that we recognize as an issue, it could be possibility of a liability for the fire district. If there was a fire and they fail,
Sure, because you knew about it, and why didn't you do something would be somebody's comment.
Right, and obviously, we can't replace them all at one time. It's at $45,000 with approximately 150 hydrants. It's a pretty substantial cost to the district, and at this point in time, they don't feel they're ready to bond for those type of improvements. Because the district right now is actually looking at implementing or starting a sewage department. There's no municipal sewer in Colchester, and we've been negotiating with the city of Burlington to install a municipal sewer system. And so that project right there is going to be, they're figuring a value of about $26 million. So that, they understand that the failures of the infrastructure of the water side, but they're really focusing, if they're going to go to bond, they're going to go to bond for the sewer at this point. And what they have done is we collect about $100,000 annually from the readiness to serve, which is $3 per month per meter connection. So they've allocated $45,000 of that $100,000 towards the fire hydrant replacement program. So,
and you're calling that a readiness? What did you call that? A readiness to serve?
Readiness to serve, and basically what that was that the fire district recognized that the system was getting older, and obviously we're going to be required to do more upgrades as time goes on. So instead of waiting till we actually had, as the asset management talks about, wait till the systems fail and then you have to go out to bond, we established this readiness to serve charge about 4 years ago, and which, like I said, which is $3 per meter connection, which, like I said, generates about $96,000 to $100,000 annually. And this money is set aside in a specific reserve, basically only taken out for capital improvements to the system, not to cover the operational cost or anything like that. It's strictly just for those major system upgrades. And we actually had, 2 years ago, we actually did about 3,000 feet of water main that were replaced in a section that we were having some significant issues with the water quantity, and so we did that, and so that's how so that's how that was funded, without the use of any, without having to go to bond. So and that's worked out extremely well for us. So every year, the money that we generate is put aside, and then we take a look at what capital needs. We got a 5-year plan in place for areas that we think need to be upgraded or replaced, and that's what we're doing. That's what we're funding these. So.
Great. Do you know how long, do they have sort of an open-ended thing where you'll get $45,000 a year for some period of time, or is it just kind of a once and done? Or
no, actually, well, obviously, no, it's not, because the system is continuously getting older. So at some point in time, we have booster pumps that that we use. At some point, those booster pumps are going to need maintenance. And the other thing that really becomes a question is what's going to happen with these AC mains and how long. I think from different talking to other utilities, there's a various of how long AC mains are actually going to be able to will stay in service without starting to see significant numbers of failures. And, we're looking at 14 miles of AC main, which is pretty, is a significant amount of money. So,
yeah.
Obviously Right. So obviously, you know, and of course the technology, and it's funny because I got a call from a vendor. Now what they're doing is there's some procedures or procedures that in place now that you can actually don't have to excavate. They just shoot a new liner through, and you know, so that you don't have to dig up every foot of the main. So which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And which would be significantly less money than having to replace each and every section of main. You know. But obviously, you know, so and funny you should say that because that's one of the questions that we have from the customers when they came in. They say, well, how long are we going to be paying this readiness to serve? And at this point in time, the fire district has decided that we'll keep it going till, you know, and like I said, we expend money. We try to expend a portion of it every year, and this year will be $45,000 for the fire hydrant replacements. We're actually looking at upgrading the O&M manual, and that's going to be like at $8,000. And there's some other smaller projects that we're going to also be doing this year. So that pretty much eats up the amount of money that we're going to be generating this year. So,
Well, that's
and I
good. So
think
you're
that,
upgrading, you're doing like an upgrade of the entire system's O&M manual?
yes,
Oh,
right.
great.
Well, because actually I was looking at it. In fact, when I came back from one of the classes, I looked at the O&M manual, and it's like, it actually was done in 2000. So it's like, okay, wait a minute. I think it's maybe we need to take a look at this again, you know. And so that's, you know, so the board actually last Thursday, I brought this proposal before them, and they agreed that we should update the O&M manual and the master plan. So
Fantastic.
yeah.
That's a great success.
Well, it is because, you know, my history was with the City of Burlington Fire Department, which was a non-revenue producing department. And it's kind of interesting when you work for a revenue producing department, you know. You know, you're
Yeah.
able to do more things, you know, you're not always begging, you know. So
That's great. So
yeah.
you'll do about roughly 9 fire hydrants, you think, out of the 45,000?
Yes, right.
And you're
And
gonna.
we're gonna go out to bid probably in another 2 months to see whether or not we can, you know, with whether or not we can get a contractor to come in and do 9 of them and maybe get a better price.
Uh-huh.
I had estimated 6,000, but that was based on us doing the work and hiring a local excavator to do it, you know. But if we can bring a firm in, and maybe we can do a better price, you know, if they know that
Sure.
they've got, you know. So that's what our plan is at this point in time.
And you'll use this, the work that you're doing in the spring to try to pick out which are the 9 highest, or do you feel like you already know which are the 9 that are
No,
going to
basically,
be?
yeah. Basically, what we've decided to do is we're going to take the oldest developments that were installed, that were put in, and then we're going to start there and then work our way up, so that the oldest hydrants will be the first to be
Okay.
upgraded or replaced, right?
Okay.
We figured those would be more prone, you know, and you know, so because most of the system is pretty much sandy soil, so we don't have a lot of issues with soil, highly acidic soils or anything like that. So so everything is pretty much all sand out here, so it's have those type of issues. So
Great.
okay.
And it sounds like your board is pretty receptive to, hearing about the need, and that they do believe, even maybe you didn't get quite as much money as you might like, but at least they see the need to fund it, and it seems like you were able to tell a pretty good story to them to get the funding and get the support to go forward with it.
Well, the interesting thing was, there's nothing else I learned from the asset management course that I took, was that really need to evaluate how much money you spend and how much benefit you're going to get from an upgrade. You know, because when we looked at that water main replacement, and then one of the classes you talked about, well, what was the biggest bang for the buck? And when we looked at it, the number of houses or connections that were serviced by that was really pretty small for the amount of investment that we put into it at this point in time. The only thing is that particular area looked like it's going to be prone for a significant amount of development. The developer has just approached the town, and they're looking at putting 45 units more of housing and that same developer is looking at buying another 100 acres which is serviced by this main. So you can see that right now we didn't really get the biggest bang for the buck, but obviously within the next 5 to 7 years, I think that would have had to been done just to be able to supply those new developments that are occurring.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah. So.
Great.
Yeah. So. And
Fantastic.
in fact, 2 months ago, or back in December, the Prudential Committee decided that we're going to be implementing impact fees. I did a survey of many of the local other utilities in Chittenden County and see whether or not they charge impact fees for developments. And come to find out, we're one of the few that does not charge an impact fee for new developments, which covers the cost of some of the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's been approved and it's been put in place. So,
great.
And the reason being is that the system was designed for what it was designed for, but now with the zoning changes, we're starting to see a lot of infill. So that means that the system was designed to feed this number of connections, but as more of these infills are starting to occur, whether or not the systems or the mains are going to be large enough to be able to take this on. You got 3, 4 here, 10 over here. At some point, that 6-inch main is not going to be adequate enough, and it's going to have to be replaced. So that's what we're, so that money that we're generating from that will be set aside for those type of replacements. So.
Yeah, I think that's getting to be more and more common as people realize that, new development does add a lot of cost to the expansion of a system or the upgrading of a system to be able to serve, and they're calling them various things, expansion charges or right to serve or whatever, impact fees, doesn't matter what you call it, kind of gets you the same place, where the newer developments keep from having the existing customers pay for expansions to serve new developments. So hopefully that'll help you offset some of your costs of upgrades or new infrastructure that you have to put in and that kind of thing.
Right. Well, that was the intent of implementing these fees, to do that. So,
great.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Anybody have any questions?
I do.
All right, go for it.
Hey, Dick, Jim Soriano. I have 3 questions for you, actually. Do you know what are the impact fees based on, and what are they typically, what's the charge typically? Is it depending on the size of the development, or?
No, actually, after reviewing some other communities in Chittenden County, most of them are based on bedrooms. So the fee is based on per bedroom.
Okay.
And right now it's $585 per bedroom, with a minimum charge of $1,755, which would relate to a three-bedroom home. And then there's a $2,000 connection fee, a $1,000 meter fee, and a $1,500 hydrant fee. $1,500 per hydrant in the development. And like I said, that's after looking at some of the other communities, and that's pretty much how they came up with the rationale for these impact fees for the water systems.
Okay.
And is this something the developer pays, the $2,000 connection fee, or do they charge the home? Does the homeowner pay that?
No, it's all new development.
Okay.
This would be all for all new development, unless an individual homeowner buys a vacant lot on an existing street, then they would only be charged the meter fee and the tapping fee, and then per bedroom fee.
Okay, and the per bedroom, what was that again? $585. $585. Okay.
Yeah, and if you look at it, actually, if you go to the websites of the town of Essex or the village of Essex, city of South Burlington, Milton, Williston, you can print out. I mean, the fees, the impact fee schedule is all over the place, and so the governing body took a look at all of them and decided, okay, this is what we're going to charge, and actually compared that to what the town is charging for impact fees for new developments as part of the permitting process. So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. Thanks. Two other quick questions. Was the section of pipe you mentioned that you replaced, was that AC pipe?
Yes, it was. Yep.
Yeah.
It was all AC. It was 6-inch AC. Was 6-inch AC, and the reason why we had replaced it, we were having some. Apparently, when it was installed back in '75, it was never installed correctly. It was never bedded properly, so there was a lot of ground movement that would snap the pipe. Which, like I said, it wasn't that big of a deal. But when you're out there on New Year's Day and it's 25 below, you know, you don't want to be doing that every New Year's Day, or And it seemed that was when we were having the most significant breaks, was when the temperatures were the coldest and the ground was moving the most.
Yeah, that was my last question. Is what was the age of the AC pipe? Is that all the 14 miles pretty much the same age cohort?
Yeah, actually, it started. Well, the system was installed. The main portion of the system was installed at 65, which was mostly ductile iron and cast iron, and then all the subdivisions really started to take off around 68 to 75 was when the largest boom of AC pipe that was installed.
Okay. Thanks.
Then after that, after 75, they abandoned that and had gone to mostly ductile iron. But that was pretty much when the Mallas Bay section of Colchester really peaked in developing.
Thanks.
Does that answer your question?
Yes, definitely. Thank you.
Okay. Yep.
Do we have any other questions? Okay. James, who else do we have on the line?
Chris, although I'm not sure if his mic is working. Chris, were you able to call in? Are you there, Chris?
I think so. You tell me.
Yep, you're there. Great, fantastic. Thank you. So, Chris, do you want to just talk to us a little bit about your activity?
Yeah, my system for this project is East Thetford Water Company, and it consists of a well and a few miles of piping, and 2-inch PRV valve, and pumps, treatment with chlorine and phosphate, water meter, reservoir. It's a fairly simple system, but it's fairly high maintenance. So, and it's 57 years old now. It was put in by Department of Transportation when they salted the spring. So we're looking at a lot of the work is adding curb stops to the system right now for customers that don't have them. As far as replacement and maintenance goes, the well recently fell in output, and we fracked it. So we're investigating whether we have to re-drill it or add another one, or develop the spring that was used before the salt came into it. It seems to be a much better level now. So this year we're going to be doing a daily monitoring of use, which we've never done before, to work out what the actual load on the system is as far as peak days, and determine whether we have to go ahead with some kind of major development for a new source. Beyond that, we have quite a bit of pipe that is close to 60 years old, and when it fails, it's usually at a joint or a T, and when that happens, we try to add curb stops so that those points can be isolated in the future without shutting off the whole system. So the budget is fairly tight now, but as far as long-term planning goes, we haven't set up a schedule beyond the replacement of curb stops. It's kind of, I mean, the source replacement is going to depend on the outcome of the daily monitoring. So a good deal of the system was put in 1989. That includes the pump house and the reservoir and several miles of 4-inch pipe that feeds from the reservoir down into the village. And the village section is the old section. We plan on some renovation of the reservoir controls, and that's pretty much where we're at.
So the monitoring you're going to do, how are you going to do that? Did you install any kind of automatic meter reading, or are you just going to send somebody to take, like, you know, see what the meter reads, or how are you going to do that part, the daily monitoring?
Well, it's not a location where anybody's going to go every day. In summer, you have to go through a pasture, which involves opening 2 gates and closing them behind you every time you go up there. We're looking at monitoring either, let's see, a data logger like, let's see, like a Tellog data logger.
Okay.
Or possibly a pulse recorder with some kind of communications, like a cell modem or a wireless hotspot. That's
okay.
kind of expensive for this system. It's not a big budget. So we're looking at off-the-shelf hardware. That seems to be costing maybe $2,500 or something like that. Or I'll put together a system with a laptop that will log from the meter. It's an old meter that puts out a frequency pulse of around 3 volts at maybe 20 feet per minute of the flow. So if we can afford to have remote communication, that would be nice, particularly because there's a marginal alarm system. What happens if the reservoir is low is kind of a buzzer alarm goes off, and there is a neighbor within hearing distance of that, but they're quite a ways away, and it's not clear that they'll always hear the thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So adding an alarm in there is another impetus for getting remote communication.
Great. And you said you fracked the well to try to get it back in operation. Did that? Is this part of the monitoring, is to see if you had enough success out of that to have that be still your main source?
Yeah, the state wants to be convinced that we can get by with less than what their normal requirement is.
Okay.
So it's really, we're not testing the well with the monitoring, we're really testing the system to see how much it uses,
Okay.
what the maximum load is. The well puts out less than, well, according to the, we didn't do a full logging, you know, like 3-day log of the well, but the initial test looked like it put out around 5 gallons a minute, which is, it's enough for the system, but it's not enough for the state.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Do we have anybody else on the line?
That's it.
Okay. So just a couple of things that are coming up. I actually put in a session for the Water Infrastructure Conference that AWWA is putting out. I won't know if they've selected the session until about, I think it's maybe 6 more weeks. But the session included what I was titling the whole session is Simplifying Asset Management, and it's a 4-hour session. And one of the things that I put in was talking about kind of what we've been doing in Vermont. So if it gets accepted, I'm going to be reaching out to see if anybody from Vermont or even more than one want to go to that session and present. So there might be an opportunity to kind of present some of what you're doing and sharing ways of getting asset management implemented in a system without making it be like a super onerous thing. So I'll keep you posted. There were about 5 or 6 submittals, and we were one of those. And it was supported by the Asset Management Subcommittee, but I think they're only going to do maybe 1 or 2, so we don't know yet. But one of the things that might happen is it might end up as a session at the big AWWA conference next June in 2017. So stay tuned, because there may be an opportunity for one or more of you to come and share with your peers some of what you've done. So that's kind of an exciting opportunity. And then we'll be, again, reaching back out to each of you. I think Allison and Jim have already sent out evaluations. And then the other thing that I'll probably be asking you about is we've been thinking about tools that will kind of help fill in some gaps. And I'm not talking about asset inventory type of tools, because there are plenty of those. But things that would help you as you start implementing your asset management programs. And somebody on their homework assignment noted that it's kind of hard to do cost estimating of what it costs you to replace some of your infrastructure items, some of your assets. And that might be an area where maybe there's more help needed on how to estimate, you know, just doing a simple estimate. We're not talking about like an engineering level estimate of a project, but just, you know, a ballpark estimate for what it costs to replace a meter or a hydrant or, you know, pipe or something like that. So that might be the kind of tool that could really help people as they move forward. So we'll probably be asking you those kinds of questions as well to kind of help us know better what kind of things are needed. So I think that's all that's coming up right now. And then, as I had told you before, we'll still have the case studies that we'll write up for each of the communities. And the type of information that was presented today, some of that will be really valuable for what can come out of an asset management program. Like, for example, the idea that you heard about O&M and decided that maybe we'll take a look at what the O&M plan for our utility is, and, you know, do we need to update that? That's the kind of success that's really important to share, that it's sort of maybe not the intended outcome when you first started. It maybe wasn't something you thought about, but those extra things that kind of came out of just looking at your assets in a different way or thinking about them in a different way, and how that might have led to, you know, doing other things like, you know, like the O&M plan or starting developer fees or whatever, whatever kind of came out of you just thinking about your assets in another way, is really important to share with others who might be on the fence about whether they want to take this on or not. Is just letting them know that just starting down that path might lead to other benefits for the system, or might lead to you improving something else, because once you start taking a look in one place, you know, oftentimes it might lead you to take, you know, a look in other places. So I think all those things are really important to share with your peers as they're starting down the same path that you are. So Jim, did you want to say anything about the funding? I don't know if all of that has been worked out, or if you've had a chance to hear all that.
Sure, I'll say something. It's taking a little bit longer than I'd like us to, but yeah, we have an internal draft of the grant application being reviewed now. So we're hoping to release the solicitation soon. That will be an opportunity for any community water system to apply for a grant up to $20,000 to develop part or an entire asset management program or plan that can be used to run a program. And it will require a 30% in-kind match, which would be staff time. So this would be an opportunity where if you did want to bring a consultant engineer on board or something like that to help, develop an inventory, further develop your inventory, or continue on with the work that you started in this training, this would be an opportunity to do that.
And then one other thing I'll add is our sister center at the University of North Carolina put on a rates training last year as part of the small system manager and financial capacity work that's funded by EPA. And I believe there'll be another one of those workshops this year. And Jim, I think it's going to be in Montpelier, is that correct?
Yeah, we hadn't decided on a location, but we were thinking something a little more central than last year. It was in Burlington, so we were thinking something a little more central.
So keep up. We'll keep you abreast of that. Maybe we'll send out a notice when we get closer. The dates are not finalized, nor is the location, but that will be happening sometime in the next, 8, 9, 10 months, somewhere in there. And it's sort of a companion piece because it goes into all about rate setting and financial management and that sort of thing. So the folks who attended the asset management training may or may not be the right folks to attend for you, but you can, at least be aware of that program, and then maybe you have others that need to attend, or maybe you need to attend. It kind of depends on how your system is structured and who handles, the rate setting component of your system, or who looks at the finances. But just to make you aware that there'll be, and it's a free training for anybody who wants to attend. Anything else from Allison, Jim, or anybody on the line? Any questions?
Just a quick one for Brian. Brian, is there anyone from Northfield with you right now?
There's not.
Okay. Just asking because I will be awarding, we'll be talking to David about awarding credits for attending the webinar.
Okay.
Okay, well, thank you all for being on. I know it's a little bit cold and not quite so nice up in Vermont today. I've been bragging earlier that we're in about 60s and sunny here, so I wish I could bring you all here for a day or two to thaw out. But thank you all for attending on such a snowy, cold day, and I hope all goes well. And we'll be back in touch. There's some more finalizing to do, and we'll be back in touch. And I wish you all the best of luck with your implementation of asset management. And if you have questions or things come up, please let us know. We're here to help you. But in the meantime, you're doing great stuff, and keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Heather.
All right, well, have a good day.